Hello language learners, in particular the ones interested in passing the practical course of English exam. I've been thinking a lot about what we could do to have enough ground to evaluate your work this semester. We need one or two things to do until I can put you your final marks. I'll explain why I've decided to talk about this. Here is the table of the people who sent me the tasks in Do 3 system. I checked the works of 4 students very thoroughly and gave further personal tasks. And none of those 4 students have answered me in any form whatsoever. Another thing, after the classes we had in Zoom, I decided not to have any classes with you as groups either. I guess you didn't notice it, but it was extremely difficult for me to have these classes. Most of the students didn't even turn on their webcams and gave extremely short answers to most of my questions. When it's a live class, this kind of communication can work because there are many more factors that can fuel the fire of the class. In a distance learning environment, this kind of teacher-student interaction, not really, more of a teacher screen with names, one-way interaction, doesn't really work. All of the things I mentioned are not bad things. They can give food for thought about distance education, the possible future of your education. So, we need to think about it very thoroughly. What I'm trying to say is that we can't model natural, live communication in this new, entirely artificial environment. I probably owe you some explanation of what I wanted our interaction to be this semester, so that you might have a perspective of what we could do to pass our exam. Have there been any situations in history when people were separated in space but had to and wanted to communicate? Of course. It was the time before the internet and telephone, quite a long time in human history, come to think about it. What did people do to communicate during that time? Help Dora the Explorer find the answer to this question. You can actually stop the video and think about it. We've already talked about this during live classes. You can hear and understand only something you can come up with on your own, with your own thought. So, when I ask weird questions like, what did people do to communicate during that time of separation in space before the internet, phone, and TV? Try to guess the answer first. Maybe it can turn into an original thought later on. When I tried to answer this question, I thought that they wrote letters. And that kind of communication, weirdly enough, didn't feel odd and artificial. Oddly enough, it felt more real than real communication, more full, more complete, so to say. Why? All your answers to this question I'd really like to know, by the way. Don't listen to my idea until you've got your own. Try to remember our conversations from before. If this is difficult, compare VK messages and letters. What's the difference between the two? Disclaimer: I don't believe it's a good idea to compare Van Gogh and Dora the Explorer. First of all, because I think that the latter is pretty talented and has integrity. It takes quite some courage to address a question to the audience you don't even see and expect them to participate. Thank you for understanding. 1. VK messages are short and letters are longer and have all the formal elements, like greetings, reference to previous contacts, You probably remember the state exam formula of a personal letter. 2. This one is a bit more difficult to get. It's the difference in time. It takes more time to think about a letter. People usually don't just write whatever comes to mind and send it straight away. 3. With longer time come additional filters for thought and word, making them more structured and therefore more efficient to convey meaning. 4. Structure of a letter is very important. The function of any structure is to hold the opposites together, by the way. This is why a letter can serve as an almost endless source for new interpretation by the correspondent. This word means a different thing in English. Collocutor or interlocutor is better in this context. I wonder if it comes from the word locus. So, people could become closer by visiting the space of a complete text created by another person. They could literally converse and communicate their thought by providing their collocutor with a sample of their personality. This is why working on the quality of one product is more important than creating as many products as possible. Your first assignment was to try and write a text in a literary genre. This kind of text is the most condensed and difficult to structure really, because it gives you almost infinite freedom. Remember I told you about Chinese painting principle. The principle of, help me translate it, принцип единой черты. This principle is a very difficult one to understand, and what I'm about to tell you has really nothing to do with it. Almost. A painter starts by looking at the empty canvas. He looks at it, trying to find the first line within himself, the essential principle of the work. Then, suddenly, he makes the stroke of the brush lively and free. And this is the only freedom he really has. Then he just follows the logic of the painting, its structure and feeling. Again, this is difficult to understand, but if you look at this painting long enough, you can see how this was created from the first and absolutely free stroke of the brush, coming from the very heart of the painter. If someone's interested in this, you could read the book «Шитал. Беседы о живописи». The first task was intended to be the first brush stroke, in which we could find its principle and follow the brush further to make it complete. Too difficult, right? Not really. If you try to connect the thoughts from various texts you create around this initial text, it could be fun and productive. Come to think about it, the essence of this task was not in the abstract pondering of philosophical problems of unifying principle of the universe. It was about preparing the text for recording in a well-structured, articulated manner. The word to articulate has very little to do with pronunciation, by the way. When you learn to read, articulate, structure your own text, your thought becomes clearer for you. Like when I'm writing this text, editing its different intonation patterns in Audacity. Making a presentation to fit its contents, listening and repeating it after my own recording and looking into the camera, and then putting it all together into a video, the thought becomes almost tangible. Task 1. Continue the literary fragments in a different genre of your choice. After that, underline the key words in each sentence. We don't really understand this task yet. This is why I made another video and wanted to make one more. But talking to the black hole of a webcam is even less efficient than our Zoom classes. So I had to teach myself how to write video letters, a creolized text, the one consisting of a verbal and a non-verbal parts. This is actually one thing that I wanted to try and do with you as an outcome of this semester. This is why I marked this as important. Using linguado.com, create the phonetic transcription of your own text. Parse/sort out the words of the text into columns according to the quality of the stressed vowel. The example of fulfilling this task is given in videos 1 and 2. I was thinking that these videos would help you with Task 2. Task 2. Recording the words from text 1. Record the columns you've written during the first week of distance learning and the text itself. Task 2 was also meant to help you get started with communication in a different way, the communication between people who have something intelligible to say, who can be understood through their texts. There is a good saying that goes like this: to be is not to be misunderstood, or not to be understood inadequately. In order not to be misunderstood, one needs to create a certain structure that could help another being to understand what is being said. For this reason, I hinted you at the possibility of exchanging your audio essays with editable subtitles and commenting on them by, again, reading them. This task was not clearly stated, that's true, but I haven't received a single question about how to do it. That was, and still is, pretty curious for me. Task 3. Advantages and disadvantages of remote education. Write an essay with up to 250 words about 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages of remote education. Try not to be too trivial. I came up with this task as an attempt to figure out what people think about this new learning environment we were made to face. Why? As I wrote to one of the students whose work I commented on, this kind of essay is just the first step towards realizing the opportunities of distance learning. The next task I sent the students personally was to try and do one of the following things. 1. Write a negative statement for every positive aspect of distant learning you've written in your essay. Write a positive statement for every negative aspect of distant learning you've written in your essays. 2. Choose one advantage or disadvantage and write 3 pluses and 3 minuses of it. These 2 tasks can become really powerful tools for working on your product and its quality. After fulfilling these tasks, I was planning to go back to task 1. All the thoughts that we'd get from working on task 3, we could try to weave back into the text maybe. I don't know. As no one really wanted to play, we'll probably never know. what could come out of it. I mean, we could. This is why I'm recording this video. We still have an exam to pass. I've tried having a traditional exam with 2 students already. It was actually a pretty uplifting experience. We had a nice conversation and even came up with some ideas for further development of the points mentioned during the course of the exam. I was so excited that there could finally be some continuity in distance learning that actually made full transcriptions of the dialogues and wrote comments on further possible tasks and questions about some points not clear for me. Needless to say that not a single question was answered, and not a single idea was developed any further, by the students that is. Maybe we could still have some productive form of distance education. I'm still pretty sure that all needs to be a little better planned and structured in the form of precise tasks. And this video was meant to give you more specific tasks. We could try to make a creolized text together. And that is the product that could be a solid ground for you to successfully pass this distance education exam. The second part of this video would be dedicated to explaining the full route we could take, the part of understanding the key words of each sentence that we didn't really understand was altered a bit while I was making these videos. The process of working on sculpturing the text for creolizing, like caramelizing, needs to be consistently structured. And the structure can come from the so-called levels of language: phonetics, lexics, and grammar. All of these levels are interconnected and function together in order to convey meaning. I want to focus on the level that I decided to start with because it's the level I thought I was familiar with, the level of phonetics. The task of working our way up the ladder of language phenomena was the one that I asked you to sort out the words into columns according to the stressed vowel. The next video should have been about combining the words from the columns with the auxiliary words from the text. Now I'm going to present this way of working on the pronunciation of the text without a script, with the help of a Word document. Working on this video has taken more time than I thought, and I need to try and finish it in a day or 2. Again, working alone takes time, but then you learn something new every day. After all, isn't that the point of education?